The world just woke up to a nightmare it never believed was possible. For decades, the United States and Europe confidently built their technological empires on a single hidden pillar, cobalt. The metal nobody talked about, nobody taught in school, nobody showcased in the headlines. Yet the metal that powered everything, smartphones, electric cars, fighter jets, satellites, cloud computing, AI supercomputers, and military communications. Cobalt is the bloodline of the digital world. But today, the global system built on it is falling apart. Because the country that supplies 70% of the world's cobalt, the Democratic Republic of Congo, just made a decision that has thrown Washington into full-blown crisis. A decision that will shake every major tech company, every electric car manufacturer, every weapons contractor, and every Western government to its core. Congo has decided it is done being the world's raw materials warehouse. It is done being exploited. It is done exporting raw cobalt for pennies while the West earns trillions. Congo has decided to cut off the world until cobalt is refined, processed, and manufactured inside Africa. And that decision has triggered what economists are already calling a $500 billion American meltdown. Not because the U.S. cannot find cobalt somewhere else, but because it is impossible. No other nation on Earth can replace Congo, and no other metal can replace cobalt. This is the story the West never wanted to hear, but it is the new reality shaping the next century. For decades, Western corporations took cobalt from Congo while keeping the profits abroad. Tech giants built billion-dollar companies. Car manufacturers created some of the world's most powerful brands. Weapons producers supplied advanced fighters and naval systems, while Congo remained impoverished. That era is now dead. The Congolese government, backed by new African mineral policies spreading across the continent, has decided that all cobalt leaving the country must be processed, refined, and industrialized locally. The era of shipping out raw resources is over. Overnight, this decision has left Western companies scrambling. Battery manufacturers in the U.S. face shutdown risks. EV companies like Tesla, Ford, GM, Rivian, and Lucid are warning investors of supply shocks. American defense contractors are holding emergency meetings about the future of guided munitions and air-to-air combat systems. Silicon Valley giants dependent on cobalt for laptop batteries, servers, cloud computing, and AI supercomputers are already outlining the cost impacts. And in Europe, the electric vehicle sector is being pushed to the edge of collapse because nearly every EV battery currently used depends on Congo's cobalt. The West assumed Congo would never stand up. They assumed Africa would always play along. But those days are gone. This shift did not happen in isolation. Congo's bold move comes as Zimbabwe banned raw lithium exports, Namibia blocked raw rare earth shipments, Guinea halted raw bauxite exports, Tanzania restricted nickel exports, and Zambia pushed for local copper processing. The entire continent is rising in unity, refusing to export raw wealth while foreign companies make the real money. Congo's policy is the most powerful of all, not because cobalt is rare, but because Congo is the only country that matters. For years, the U.S. believed it could pressure smaller nations, negotiate loopholes, or use trade leverage. But you cannot threaten a nation that controls the lifeline of the global energy future. Congo's decision has exposed what the West tried to hide from its citizens. Every device they own, every battery they use, every jet they fly, and every AI system they are building depends on a metal controlled almost entirely by one African nation. The consequences are catastrophic for American industry. Analysts estimate that the U.S. EV market alone could lose $180 billion in value over the next decade without Congolese cobalt. The smartphone sector faces $70 billion in cost increases. AI infrastructure could see $100 billion in delays, as cobalt-rich batteries are key to powering next-generation GPU clusters. The aviation and defense sectors face over $150 billion in procurement disruptions. Add them together, and the total projected American meltdown exceeds $500 billion. And that doesn't include the long-term effects, like the weakening of America's military advantage or the collapse of U.S. EV manufacturing competitiveness. For the first time in modern history, Africa, not Washington, not Brussels, not London, has the power to dictate the pace of global technological advancement. Congo is no longer begging for investment. It is demanding value. And that is the one thing the West never prepared for. To fully understand the panic in Washington, you must understand cobalt's role in modern power. Without cobalt, electric cars cannot function. Without cobalt, lithium-ion batteries cannot store high-density energy. Without cobalt, satellites and drones cannot operate reliably. Without cobalt, military communication systems cannot run at the required stability. Without cobalt, AI data centers cannot handle the heat and energy load needed to train massive models. Cobalt is the stabilizer of high-performance batteries, and Congo owns the largest and highest quality deposits. This dominance is not accidental. It is geological destiny. When Africa's tectonic plates collided millions of years ago, they created the richest mineral zone on Earth, a zone located almost entirely in Congo. The West has known this for decades, which is why foreign powers have fought for influence in the region through mining companies, NGOs, and political maneuvering. But Congo now understands its strength, and for the first time, it is using it. What makes this moment even more devastating for the U.S. is that China saw it coming years ago. While Washington was distracted with politics and internal division, China invested heavily in Congolese mines, refineries, infrastructure, and long-term contracts. Today, Chinese companies control an estimated 15 of the 19 largest cobalt mines in the country and more than 80% of the global cobalt refining industry. This means even if the U.S. attempts to bypass Congo's government, it still has to deal with Chinese-owned supply chains. As Africa asserts sovereignty over its minerals, China is positioned to benefit the most, and the U.S. is positioned to lose the most. American companies simply do not have an alternative. They cannot produce cobalt domestically at scale. They cannot refine cobalt domestically at competitive prices. They cannot source cobalt from other nations in meaningful quantities. The West built an entire technological civilization on a metal they do not control. And now, the nation that controls it is rewriting the rules. Congo's government has made it clear that the world can have cobalt, but only on Africa's terms. Foreign companies must build processing plants inside the country. They must employ local workers. They must share profits with local communities. They must contribute to long-term industrial development instead of simply extracting wealth. These demands are not unreasonable. Western nations themselves use these principles to become wealthy by forcing countries to manufacture locally, not export raw materials. Now Africa is using the same strategy. The U.S. calls it unfair. Europe calls it protectionism. Africa calls it independence. For many Congolese citizens, this moment represents something deeper than economics. It is justice. For decades, cobalt left the country in massive quantities while the people remained poor. Now the nation is demanding a new future. The impact of Congo's decision goes beyond economics. It shifts the balance of global power. The United States has always maintained dominance by controlling the technologies of the future. EVs, AI, advanced weaponry, space systems, high-performance computing. These were the pillars of American strength. But every pillar requires cobalt, and every kilogram of cobalt traces back to Africa. If the U.S. cannot secure cobalt supply chains, it cannot secure its technological dominance. And if it cannot secure technological dominance, it cannot secure military dominance. Congo's decision may not destroy America, but it weakens a crucial foundation of American power. That is why Washington is silent publicly but scrambling privately. This crisis is happening behind closed doors because admitting it publicly would reveal how dependent America truly is. Meanwhile, African nations see Congo's move as a model. Zimbabwe is expanding its lithium ban. Namibia is strengthening its rare earth export rules. Zambia and the DRC are building a joint battery manufacturing zone. Tanzania is pushing ahead with nickel processing. South Africa is investing in vanadium battery manufacturing. The continent is aligning around one idea. Africa should no longer export wealth and import poverty. This shift threatens the West because it transforms Africa from a resource supplier into a competitor. If Africa refines its own minerals, it becomes a global manufacturing powerhouse. It moves up the value chain. It takes profits away from the corporations that once controlled the system. Congo's decision marks the beginning of the end of Western resource dominance. What makes this moment even more powerful is that Africa is no longer negotiating alone. BRICS Plus, with members like China, Russia, and Saudi Arabia, is providing financing, infrastructure, and technology that Africa previously lacked. Instead of relying on Western aid or IMF loans, Congo is partnering with nations that accept local processing, profit sharing, and African ownership over minerals. This partnership threatens the economic structure that kept Africa dependent on the West for decades. Now Western nations find themselves on the outside, watching the world's most lucrative mineral supply slip out of their control. The U.S. has attempted to counter with diplomatic pressure and promises of investment, but African nations are not interested in promises. They want factories, infrastructure, advanced manufacturing, and full control of their resources. Congo understands one truth the West hoped it would never understand. Whoever controls cobalt controls the energy future. The world is moving toward electric vehicles, renewable energy, massive battery storage, and AI-powered industries. All of these rely on cobalt-based technologies. By enforcing local processing, Congo is positioning itself as a global energy superpower. If it succeeds, it will become one of the most strategically important nations of the century. This rise will not be easy. Congo faces internal political challenges, corruption issues, and security concerns. But the decision to assert sovereignty over cobalt is a step toward transformation. It is a declaration that Africa will no longer be the raw materials supplier of the world. It will be an industrial force. The U.S. meltdown is only beginning. American companies are already reporting production delays. EV manufacturers are increasing prices. Tech companies are warning investors about battery shortages. Defense contractors are researching cobalt-free alternatives, but these technologies are years or decades away. Congress is debating emergency measures to secure cobalt supplies, but there is no quick fix. You cannot build mines overnight. You cannot replace Congo, and you cannot undo decades of dependence with one policy. The truth is simple. Congo has America in a chokehold, and the U.S. cannot escape without Africa's cooperation. This moment is a turning point in global history. For the first time, Africa is not reacting to global decisions. It is setting the global agenda. Congo's cobalt strategy is forcing the world to view Africa not as a resource pool, but as a global powerhouse shaping the future of technology, energy, and geopolitics. And this is only the beginning. As Africa strengthens its unity, modernizes its laws, and builds its industries, the world will have no choice but to negotiate on Africa's terms. The balance of power is shifting, and the meltdown in Washington is only a preview of what happens when Africa takes control of its destiny.